Euranet Plus Panorama is a weekly review of European news broadcast by our network of EU radio stations.
Online platforms must do better, says the Commission's Tech Policy Chief. But education and regulation are also key to keeping democracy alive in the age of AI. At this week's special Euranet Plus summit, Commission EVP Henna Virkkunen, who holds responsibility for technological sovereignty, security and democracy, speaks to our member stations about a range of topics within her portfolio. Our colleague Annick from RTBF launches proceedings by highlighting recently published and rather alarming data from the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. Data suggesting that in 2024, disinformation affected at least 4 in 5 of the national elections monitored by the Global Election Monitor, including some in EU member states. Yes, says the Executive Vice-President, but the picture is not homogeneous.
During the Romanian elections, 20 times more disinformation was flagged by the trusted flaggers now during the presidential elections than 1 year ago in the European elections in the whole European Union. So 20 times more in Romania. But in the same time in Portugal, they had also elections and there was nearly not reported that kind of disinformation. So it's also a very different situation in different countries.
The report also shows that foreign interference is becoming increasingly sophisticated, involving a mixture of cyber attacks, financial influence and online manipulation. So, Annick asks, when it comes to the digital regulation of platforms and keeping up with these fast-moving threats, do the tools we have at our disposal in the EU fall short?
I think that we have very robust rules in the European Union when it comes to digital services, because we have Digital Service Act and now we are fully enforcing these rules, and it's very clearly said in our rules that online platforms, they have to all the time assess and mitigate the systematic risks they are posing, for example, to our civic discourse or electoral processes, and especially when it comes to elections.
But, she continues, Brussels is not resting on its laurels and simply relying on the rules. They are taking a more active approach than this.
When there's elections coming in different member states, together with the National Digital Coordinator, Commission has been also having roundtables with online platforms and really checking that they have all the practices in place and they are making sure that they are not manipulated or misused during the electoral processes.
The European Democracy Shield is another new policy initiative by the European Commission, one that was proposed last summer and is currently under development. It brings together a number of proposals intended to protect the EU's democratic processes and institutions from various threats, particularly those related to foreign information manipulation and interference, and to enhance the resilience of its democratic systems.
When we are preparing our Democracy Shield, of course, the integrity of our electoral processes and really the disinformation and foreign interference part will be a crucial part of that.
The Commission expects to release its communication on the Democracy Shield in the third quarter of 2025. Katie at the Europeans asks the EVP for her take on the suggestion that it's within the EU's existing powers and interests to force social media companies to switch off their so-called recommender algorithms, which can be used to bombard citizens with content that makes them fearful, angry and open to political manipulation. Virkkunen does not directly answer the question, but does raise the important issue of transparency.
It's also one part of our Digital Service Act that we want to make sure that online platforms, they are transparent. And that's why they have to also inform the users also why certain content is recommended for them. And the users also have possibility to change the recommender system. We know that nearly all of online platforms, they are not transparent enough in their actions.
They know this as last year a number of large online platforms and search engines were audited to assess their compliance with their Digital Services Act obligations regarding the management of illegal content, disinformation and the protection of fundamental rights. X and Meta fared worse with the Commission, with many breaches noted in the fields of content moderation, fact-checking, data access, advertising transparency, and misleading or dangerous practices affecting minors. So, asks Claudia at German broadcaster AMS, what more could the EU be doing to raise everyone's awareness of online manipulation?
I also want to underline the importance of our media literacy and digital skills and digital literacy. It's very important that we are also educating our citizens to digital world, that everybody is having also the tools to think and analyze critically also the content what they see. And we see that when we are looking at the digital skills, we are not there where we should be. So this is certainly an area in the coming months and years where we have to focus and also look the best examples, those member states who has been successful in this field, but because as a general level, we are lagging very much behind on digital skills.
Artyms, our moderator from Latvia's radio, asks EVP Virkkunen about the social media age restriction proposal that a number of politicians across the EU are now vocally backing.
In our Digital Service Act, we have very clear obligation for online service providers that when minors are using those services, very high level of safety, privacy and security should be ensured for the minors. And we know that this is not the case now. That's why Commission has opened several investigations against the very large online platforms. But we are also now finalizing our guidelines for online platforms, where we are really showing for them that what kind of practices we are expecting from the online platforms to make it more safe and secure for our minors also to use these services. I understand also the discussion about the age limit, but in the same time, we have to also think that we have to educate also citizens for the digital world. So I think it's important also to learn to use digital tools, but I understand that in many families it's a major concern, especially about the screen time.
The new guidelines Virkkunen mentions recommend that those platforms most likely to pose risks to minors implement measures to mitigate those risks by blocking access to problematic content, ensuring account confidentiality, and reducing the risk of cyberbullying. The consultation period for these guidelines has just closed. Meanwhile, built-in age verification solutions and parental control software are strongly supported by many member states, including Cyprus, Denmark, France, Greece, Slovenia and Spain. And the Commission is working on an age verification app that's intended to provide a stopgap until the EU digital identity wallet becomes available, supposedly by the end of 2026. Gigi, our colleague from Radio 24 in Milan, brings the conversation back around to the much-debated question of technological sovereignty. Yes, says Virkkunen, of course we want sovereignty, but not at the expense of cooperation.
It's important that we have our own capacity in all our critical sectors, that we are not dependent on one company or one third country when it comes to very critical services. And we have specified that especially AI and quantum technology and semiconductors, these are three very critical technologies to where we have to invest ourselves to make sure that we have also capabilities ourselves here. But in the same time, it doesn't mean that we are closing our borders, that we are not cooperating with others. We see that it's an important part of competitiveness that we are also working very closely with a like-minded partner when it comes to technologies and digital. But in the same time, important also to have our own capacity, that we are not dependent.
And what about when it comes to artificial intelligence? Presses Aushra at Ginu Radias. Isn't it time to admit that the EU is falling behind in the AI race, with its continuing focus on adopting already overdue regulations when all the major players are based elsewhere in the world anyway? The Executive Vice-President begs to differ, insisting that the regulatory exercise is vital.
We know that AI will change many things in our society and industry and working places in the coming years. So it's important that people can trust to this technology. For example, when AI is used in the hospital, it's important that our citizens know that it's meeting certain standards and it has been tested before applying on the markets.
She also disagrees that Europe has lost the global AI race.
We have also many strengths in the European Union when it comes to AI. So we have the biggest amount of researchers on AI in the European Union, and also we have about 6,000 startups who are working to deploy AI. But the main obstacle for them has been that they haven't had computing capacity to train their AI systems. And that's why we are now investing to AI factories together with our member states to make sure that our startups and researchers, they have access to computing capacity, then they can also develop AI in the European Union.
These 15 or so AI factories, stemming from the AI Continent Action Plan presented in early April, will bring together computing power, data and talent from multiple member states to create cutting-edge AI models and applications. But the Gigafactories concept will take this to the next level, with a new EU fund of €20 billion set aside to create up to 5 top-spec, large-scale AI facilities to support European researchers and industry. But with private sector funding accounting for just 2/3 of R&D funds in the EU, significantly less than in the US or China, one key priority for Virkkunen is to harness more private investment to help the bloc meet its AI ambitions going forwards. So we'll close there. Tune in again next week for a more standard roundup of the news from around the Euranet Plus network.